but please do use the chat function for any thoughts, questions, or feedback you have. This is very much your coalition call, so we want to hear from you. We want you to engage with the conversation. So if you have any thoughts, please do put it in the chat. If you like what somebody's saying, please do use the emojis on Zoom. We really want this to be interactive and to hear from you and for you to be able to speak to each other through that chat function during the call. And please do remember that we are on social media. So if you do want to speak about this event externally, you can hashtag FDN Coalition Call, and you can also tag FutureDotNow in your post. So please do feel free to use the social media apps and hashtags. Great. So I will give a really quick update on FutureDotNow and kind of where we're at. So firstly, we're delighted to welcome 2 new team members. So you'll see them on today's call. So we've got Paul Fleming, who's on secondment from Accenture, and Carol Lazell, who's on secondment from Nationwide. And they'll be working on making our members' experience even better within the coalition. So really happy to welcome them to the team. Secondly, we just want to speak a bit about membership. So growing the coalition is really important to us. We know that in order to achieve impact at scale, we need to work together. It's not something that we can do by ourselves. So to this end, we're really working on our efforts to connect with organizations in priority sectors where we know that digital skills is lower. So from the Lloyd's Consumer Digital Index this year, we've identified a few areas that we'll be looking into, which are construction, retail, and hospitality, just to name a few. And we've also been really privileged with our senior leaders that joined our senior council last month. They're helping us to support this goal. And we just want to thank everybody who has helped so far to connect and use their networks to connect us with other people so that we can facilitate conversations in these areas. Another update we wanted to give you is on our digital skills playbook, something that I'm very close to as part of the work that I'm doing. So we've been able to make some amazing progress with that. We've been holding workshops, and what that playbook is going to do is give employers an opportunity to find best practice examples, hints, tips, and tools that can help them on their digital upskilling journey. We've been working with a working group who have helped give us some really valuable feedback so that the content is as strong as possible and as useful as possible to the people who will be using this. We really want to work with you on this, and we'll be piloting the playbook in the new year. And in our next coalition call, we'll be going into it in more detail. But if you do want to get involved in the pilot or provide any feedback, please do reach out to us at hello@future.now.uk, and we'll be happy to speak to you about that. Lastly from me, you know that we've recently launched our updated strategy, which you can find in our annual review, and we've been working really, really hard to update that. So if you do want to find more, have a look at our annual review, or you can drop a message to us as well, and we'll be happy to speak to you about that. So again, enough from me. I'm really happy to pass over to our FutureDotNow board member, Gemma Walters, who is Head of Responsible Transformation at Lloyd's Banking Group. And Gemma's going to be leading us through today's session, sharing a number of new data sources and reflecting on what they are telling us about people's relationship with digital and technology. So I will now pass over to Gemma.
Hello, thank you, Nadia. That was brilliant. Really appreciate that. Thank you. So I guess exactly as you said, so Head of Responsible Transformation at Lloyd's Banking Group, but also have the privilege of being one of the board members at FutureDotNow, working with lots of different organisations and partners to help close the digital divide. So as Nadia said, today's session is really about understanding the stats, the story, some of the policies and some of the insight. So really excited to have along today. So we've got Thomas Hewitt from Department for Education to talk a little bit about the National Skills Fund. And there might be some hot off the press information from the spending review, fingers crossed. We've then got Lloyds Bank and Be the Business. So last Friday, the team published a study looking at small businesses and how their tech adoption and digital capability journey has changed and evolved across this very tumultuous year. And then lastly, we're joined by Harry from Microsoft, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the digital skills report that they've just worked on. So a jam-packed agenda that we're really excited to bring to you today. So as Nadia said, please do pop in lots of comments in the chat, and also at the end of today's session, we'll have a little bit of a Q&A, hopefully. So I'll be scanning through and picking up any of the questions. Tom. Tom, over to you.
Hi everyone. Yeah, so that's the best introduction I've had for some time. I've just realised I'm not showing my video as well, which is extremely sort of antisocial of me. And I was sort of attending a how to sort of work on online, a sort of Zoom and Teams masterclass the other day, and the first rule, which I've already broken there, which was you know, wherever possible, always sort of share your screen, particularly when you're speaking.
Tom,
So,
don't worry. You've nailed it. I can see you. I can see you on the screen. Don't you worry.
good stuff. Great. So I can see my sort of presentation is loaded there, which is great. Yeah. So here today to talk a little bit about the National Skills Fund, which is the policy area that I'm certainly not wholly responsible for, but my kind of role is sort of policy engagement as part of the National Skills Fund programme. So if we're just able to sort of skip onto the next slide, that sets out a little bit of the detail sort of on the fund. But this is actually an announcement that goes back about 12 months. I think the main thing to say sort of about the National Skills Fund, to just sort of put it into context, clearly, you know, the last 12 months have been sort of pretty extraordinary, and this was announced sort of before everything that's happened over the last 12 months. So this is now very much a part of the kind of wider, not just department, but government's response. And you will have seen, or many of you will have seen, a few weeks ago, kind of the Prime Minister's speech, sort of setting out his ambition for sort of a lifetime skills guarantee, which sort of isn't in itself a policy, but that's kind of very much setting out sort of government's commitment to ensure that not just funding, but sort of government's efforts across departments are focused on supporting sort of jobs, but sort of, yeah, wider economic recovery, sort of both now, but particularly looking sort of, you know, post-COVID, when you know, hopefully into kind of next year. So the National Skills Fund, if you knew nothing about it before, what and even if you did, the main thing for me to sort of get across is that it's part of that kind of wider government response. So you know, 2.5 billion in the context of sort of the amounts being bandied about in terms of COVID recovery, you know, isn't sort of necessarily a huge amount of funding, but it's a really kind of big skills commitment. And the idea is really to sort of focus on that section of kind of adults who sort of certainly aren't sort of degree educated, but particularly focusing on the kind of level 3+. So people who sort of haven't got an A level, you know, may have had a number of different sort of jobs and sort of career paths, and it's really about that support for sort of retraining and stepping up. And very sort of timely that I'm speaking at this, because obviously digital is sort of one of those areas. If we just sort of skip on to the next slide, I think the other thing to mention as well, for some of you may have been aware or been involved in the development of the National Retraining Scheme, which was the sort of National Skills Fund's sort of predecessor, but that was very much focused on, it's actually kind of a digital product to support people, particularly looking at sort of signposting and careers advice and guidance, whereas this is a much larger kind of pot of money which will focus on the actual skills delivery. So it's new money for training that wasn't previously kind of free at the point of access. So that's the main thing to sort of say about the NSF. So it's an existing funding commitment, but as was alluded to earlier, sort of spending review, the Chancellor went through some of that yesterday. Yeah, most of the work has kind of gone on before that, but I think that the main headlines from that people on this call might be particularly interested in. So it will be announced kind of formally next week, but sort of a new level 3 in first full level 3 entitlement for adults. So essentially adults that don't already have an A-level or level 3 equivalent will be able to access free training at level 3 on a sort of selected list of courses. It's a fairly extensive list of courses, but those subject areas have been sort of prioritized based on well, sort of analysis looking at the sort of the skills that the labour market will kind of need at level 3. It's also worth saying, some of you may be aware there was a bit of criticism in the press last week actually, around government sort of almost writing off certain sectors because we were looking to sort of prioritise that list of skills. That's certainly not the case. This isn't sort of a final list. This is just, this is a new offer, so it's absolutely right to sort of have a prioritised list of sort of skills and training, so that we're not casting our net too wide. And this is very much based on sort of not just government analysis, but that kind of intelligence in terms of speaking to big employers, sectors of the economy, and kind of our other stakeholders, and that'll be sort of formally announced kind of next week. But that will be a work in progress over the next few months. But the idea is that offer will be sort of available from April, and then over the sort of 12-month sort of following 12 months, that offer will be sort of tested to see how that's working, and where we can sort of improve that going forward. So yeah, sort of really exciting kind of new offer there. I think the other thing to talk about, so the other big announceable as part of the National Skills Fund and part of this wider lifetime skills guarantee ambition, is the Skills Bootcamp programme. So this is an existing announcement. So we'd already announced that we were funding a number of boot camps, but that was to the tune of about £8 million. So on a relatively small scale. I was going to say just focus on digital. Obviously digital extremely important, but the view there was to very much sort of ramp that program up quite quickly. So it was announced yesterday at spending review that there'd be around £40 million over the next 12 months to fund an expansion of that boot camps program. So more digital boot camps. So in places like Leeds, the boot camp there will sort of focus on a sort of 12 to 16 week model to support people in kind of digital skills. But that will be extended to sort of what has been framed as other technical skills. So other areas around kind of engineering. I can't go through the full list because it hasn't been announced yet, but there'll be the program is essentially being extended. So another sort of real positive. I think the other big thing to say here is that it's a big funding commitment. It's over the course of the next Parliament. I think previously we would have all assumed that parliaments would last for 5 years. Who knows, hey, given that we've had 3 elections in 3 years, but assuming that is the case, sort of from April over a sort of 4 or 5 month period, we'll be consulting on the NSF to get as much kind of input from a really wide range of sort of stakeholders, to essentially look at how we utilise the rest of that funding going forward for the rest of Parliament. So yeah, still a lot of work to do to determine how that fund is utilised, and of course to sort of fit in with the wider sort of skills recovery package that government have prioritised. But yeah, sort of coming soon, the consultation. So I'll kind of stop there. That's the kind of National Skills Fund in a nutshell. I know we're sort of taking questions at the end, so is that okay?
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, no, that's really helpful. I think it would be helpful in as you say, we've got questions coming later on in the session. It would be great if you could kind of reflect on a few of the questions coming through. Is what does that mean to some of the organisations that might be on the call, how might we be able to get involved either in the consultation or actually in the fund itself? What might that process look like, or some of those timelines? So maybe if we can come back to you later and cover that off, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Great.
So I guess next, going to hand over to Be the Business and some of the Lloyds Bank team, if that is all right, to talk about the report that came out last Friday. So I'll hand over to you.
Excellent, thanks Gemma, and hi everyone. Thanks so much for having myself, Alex and Josh from Lloyds and Be the Business, and hopefully you can all see and hear me and I've passed that first test. So as Gemma mentioned, and if we can just click on to the next slide please, we're here today just to give you a bit of an overview of the 2020 Transformation with Tech report, which hopefully some of you were able to join us last Friday, but that launched. And we also now have a recording link available for that too. So if you weren't able to join us on the day, you will be able to review that kind of in your own time to hear all the insights and discussions that happened. So I guess on the next slide, please, I just want to bring to life, I guess, a bit of an overview of what this report is. So I guess this year has, and I'm going to say it, has been the year, I guess, for unprecedented change. And I guess in the space of small business insights, we, I guess, in the past have, over the last 6 years, have been producing the Lloyds Bank Business Digital Index, which is the UK's largest benchmark of digital skills for small businesses. This year, in light of the pandemic, it felt like it was the right thing to do and the responsible thing to do to, I guess, really leverage our passion and data for good, and really look into how UK small businesses have used tech to survive and adapt and, I guess, navigate the pandemic this year. And that's exactly what this report is aiming to do. I guess just a bit about the data that sits behind it. So this year we've been able to increase our transactional sample. So usually we look at a transactional sample of around 2,000. This year we've managed to increase that to over 200,000 small businesses who've been able to look at their transactional data and behaviours of what they're doing online to get a proxy of their digital capability. We also surveyed 2,000 businesses online as well. And then we've conducted, I think it's over 13 now, but almost up to 20, I think, individual one-on-one discussions with those small businesses themselves to really, I guess, drill down into, I guess, the experiences and how they've coped this year. So I guess before I hand over to Josh and Alex to take you through some of the insights, I just wanted to bring to life some of the key insights that we found from the Business Digital Index last year. So just on the next slide, just to bring to life some of the key stats. So we knew last year just over half of businesses had all 6 essential digital skills, which is great, but I guess it's still lots of room for improvement. We also knew there was real opportunity for productivity and financial gains from digital capability. So those that were using cloud-based IT systems, online accounting, and digital training tools had the potential to increase their turnover by up to £262,000 a year. One of my favourite stats from last year, so I guess small businesses who were really, I guess, embracing digital were 2.5 times more likely not to close. That's massive. I guess that's, that just shows that there's a real tangible benefit to digital, and that was evident from last year. And we also knew as well that cybersecurity, we saw massive gains in that space last year. So businesses were really waking up to the fact that they need to keep themselves safe and secure online. And then I guess the thing that was preventing them to going online, and that has probably, been the biggest change this year, but last year we knew it was the motivation and mindset. People didn't really have a reason. They didn't have that big why as to why they should be going online. And hopefully, I guess through the rest of the presentation, you'll see that obviously there has been a big shift. So I'd now like to hand over to Josh from Be the Business, who we've been working on the report in partnership with.
Thanks, Jo. So for those that don't know of Be the Business, we were established in 2017 with funding from the government and business, and the aim to build a movement to transform UK productivity and competitiveness. We focus on key themes proven to impact productivity. So these be leadership, management skills and technology. And FutureDotNow and Be the Business have some similar goals. So see the use of technology grow in businesses around the UK and help improve the working lives of individuals in those organisations and the productivity of those organisations as a result. The motivation gap, as Joe just highlighted, is a challenge that both our organisations face and need to try and overcome, along with a lack of understanding about what's needed. And while the effects of the pandemic might be that this has changed a lot for businesses, and our aim actually might now be to keep this going in the right direction. So on the next slide, it shows one of the most extraordinary findings from the report, and that's 2.7 million businesses would have ceased trading if it was not for digital technology. So that's out of the estimated 6 million private sector businesses in the UK. And whether through sort of means of collaboration or communication with clients, customers, or colleagues, they've been able to stay informed and keep planning ahead in the light of an evolving landscape. And the next slide shows how the changes in levels of adoption have happened with some of the more established technologies. So FutureDotNow wants to help get people to the starting line when it comes to technology and upskilling workers across the organisation. And the key takeaway from this is there's been a strong uptake of technology among those who didn't use it before the pandemic. And this also means there could be a greater desire from businesses to train staff in those technologies and use them effectively. Each business has a key focus around the adoption of tech and making tech more established technologies easier to adopt, but also making it easier to adopt them well. And what we see here from some of these bar charts is a large portion of businesses have started using it more, shown by the second bar in, and also those that have started using it more or started using it more than ever before will carry on using it in the future. So that's shown by the last bar on each chart. One of the things the research did show, though, is sole traders are far less likely to adopt new technology. So 12% of sole traders who use digital training tools is much lower than for those larger businesses who are in the sample. I'll now hand you over to Alex, but happy to take any questions towards the end. Alex, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, if we can just move on to the next slide. I'm going to take you through a couple of the insights, firstly from the example of 200,000 small businesses, which Joe mentioned earlier on. So firstly, on the left, I'll explain this graph, but what it really shows us is that digital capabilities has really contributed to increased turnover resilience among small businesses during the pandemic, which is amazing. So we created a digital capability segmentation using our transactional behavioral data. And on the graph, the top two lines you can see are segment A of that segmentation, who are the most digitally active, with the darker, bolder line being 2020. And what you can see in June of this year is that on average, they earned £11,000 more than they did in June 2019. And this is during a pandemic. So you can see that trend kind of decreases lower down as the segments are less digitally active. I think what we believe is this is likely a greater capacity to continue trading in an economy where face-to-face business is really vastly reduced this year. So having those skills and capabilities has allowed them to carry on in a more normal way, and in some cases to sort of do better than they might have done previously because of the environment. On the right, you can see a graph showing the proportion of online payments that are being made by small businesses. So the purple line is 2020, and you can see how in August, on the very far right of the graph of this year, this figure kind of soared compared to a flat trajectory that was seen in 2019. And what this means is that now more than half of payments being made by small businesses are being done digitally, which is really good. And looking at sort of different sectors, accommodation and food sector actually performed one of the best in terms of online payments, seeing double-digit growth between February and August this year compared to only 2 percentage points during the same period of last year. So I think what this tells us is that businesses are really getting to grips with digital payments and understanding the benefits. However, admittedly, with a bit of a lag time after the first lockdown in March, because it's happening around June and August. So then just moving on to a few insights from the survey data. So yeah, half of businesses are going to be investing in tech going forward. We also saw that half of them are planning to actually prioritize digital technology, so tools and services online, as they continue to develop their businesses. So I think together these insights really point to an increasingly digitized future for small businesses, which is what we want to see. However, I guess it still leaves half of businesses who aren't either ready to invest or to completely prioritize technology. And we know how fast technology really evolves. So investment is a continual thing. It's not just a one-off. Moving on again. So 3/4 of businesses are now looking for support in their digital activities. We know from our previous research in the Business Digital Index that support had really been, or requests for support had really been growing quickly over the last few years. And of course, COVID has really accelerated this. So in terms of the types of support that's being requested, it's probably not a surprise to see that the most popular is software and applications. I guess the obvious one is what we're using here today, Zoom. I think I read the other day that it's seen a trebling of its share price this year. So obviously lots more businesses and people using it. Internet access, however, is still a top issue. So nearly 1/4 say they need help in improving the quality of their internet access. And I guess a lack of internet access for that group will have compounded effects of the digital divide this year. And then lastly, for the insights on the last slide. So yeah, 61% of businesses are not yet receiving support with digital. So whilst on the previous slide we saw that 3/4 are looking for help, there's still really quite a big unmet demand. So I guess with the acceleration that we've seen of digital transformation this year, that will need to be met with an equally big push in the provision of support. And then just in terms of the types of, in terms of those who are receiving support, banks or the business bank of that business are the actual top providers, which may be a surprise to some, but I think it's increasingly through conversations with relationship managers and their business clients where digital knowledge transfer is actually taking place. And of course, through like huge initiatives such as Lloyds Bank Academy as well. So that's it for the insights. I'll hand back to you, Jo, just to close things off.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Josh. And I'm just conscious of time, so I think on the next slide, if you were with us last Friday, you'll recognise Tony Cassidy from Glamourvan. She's one of our case studies and a massive success story from the pandemic and lockdown. I will skip past her, but just I guess a quick note: if you are keen to, I guess, hear any more of the stories or get in contact with any of them, I think these are the bits that really people remember and where the impact of the data really lies. So yes, we've got lots more where Tony has come from, but unfortunately I'll just skip past Tony just to do a quick roundup on the reflections. So essentially, I guess, based on all the data and the analysis that we've done alongside Be The Business, I guess the real issue now facing small businesses isn't why to digitize, but I guess it's where to start. Speaking to people like Tony, she said, I can't just Google what have small businesses done in a pandemic before me. I guess so when people are looking for that support, we need to make sure it's really clear and they can find it. Secondly, which technologies should they invest in first, and who are the trusted providers, and are the free resources as good as the paid for ones, which I think is a completely valid question. And again, it's great that they're thinking about which technologies to invest in rather than should I invest in the first place. So again, really evidencing that shift in mindset and motivation. And then I guess we need to make sure collectively we're investing in their future and ultimately keeping it simple. there's a lot out there, a lot of information, a lot of, I guess, noise on Google and all the various search engines. So how can we kind of make it as easy for them as possible? And then finally, and I think, I guess where the power of FutureDotNow comes is that, by putting down our brands, working together and leveraging our scales, partners and relationships, I think that's where we can really ensure we're helping all of the businesses, and I guess pivoting for next year to make sure we're giving them all the support that they so desperately need that's come out from the research. So hopefully that's been interesting and has, I guess, piqued your interest. I think there is time at the end for Q&A, but I believe I'm now going to hand back to Gemma. Is that right?
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, sure. So thank you for giving a brief overview of the report. I guess we wanted to bring it here today. We know that clearly FutureDotNow is all about leveraging some of our different assets and understanding to help the digital skills ecosystem. And whilst we are prioritising working with some of those larger organisations and employers, clearly there's an opportunity for us to think about our own kind of value chains and our customers and some of those areas, and think about how we can support small businesses too. So hopefully that was helpful insight. I'll now hand over to Harry from Microsoft, who's going to talk a little bit about the digital skills report and the piece of work that they've been doing over the last few weeks and months as well. So Harry, over to you. Thanks,
Gemma. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. See some nods. Cool. Thanks for having me. So I'm Harry Morgan. I work at Microsoft in the marketing team, looking after our skills and learning strategy, which is kind of Microsoft have been focusing, as many of you will be aware, seeing some familiar faces on the call, kind of working on kind of how do we equip more people in the UK with the kind of the skills and opportunities they need to thrive. But we've really kind of tried to reimagine that in light of COVID, as I'm sure lots of different organizations on the call have done so too. So very much looking forward to working with FutureDotNow and people on this call kind of as we build on that over the next few months. So today I'm going to be focusing on new insights launched on Monday actually by Microsoft UK, which are particularly suitable for leaders of organizations kind of all sizes as we navigate the world of work. I think, Adam, have you got the next slide on there by any chance? Maybe not. Would I be able to share the slide? Or let's have a quick look. Would you mind if I shared my screen? Yeah, cool. Forgive me, I don't use Zoom often, so I may get the wrong. Can you see? Can you see a PowerPoint slide?
Not yet, Harry.
It's obviously not as good as Team.
Never say that. Maybe. Still nothing.
No, have you clicked the green button at the bottom, Harry? Is that?
No.
Oh no, it's coming up.
There we go.
No, this is. There we are. Brilliant. Thanks, Adam. Cool. So, great. Let me just get back onto. So to go back, for those of you unfamiliar, Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And now more than ever, we are seeing skills and learning as kind of the route to kind of achieving more. But our focus hasn't just been on organizations, of course. In fact, one of our global focuses recently in response to the pandemic has been about equipping 25 million job seekers with the skills needed for the new economy, which we launched in July. I think the launch was supported kindly by the team at FutureDotNow. And a fundamental part of that commitment is aligning high quality free learning paths to 10 of the most in-demand roles that we find on LinkedIn today, the ones that have the main openings, and also providing highly discounted certifications. And as I'm sure many of people on the call have seen, with the appetite for learning, we've seen kind of a great engagement with the content that's been provided once we've kind of promoted that this is available, that it's free, that it's high quality, that you get a badge at the end of it, with over around 500,000 people taking those learning paths, part of 10 million globally. And our UK team that was the global initiative, and our UK team have recently built on that with a commitment called Get On 2021, which draws in the support and expertise of Microsoft's broad ecosystem of thousands of customers, partners, big, small, large enterprises, smallest businesses, to kind of enable more people to build careers in technology. So as a business, one of our kind of focuses has been, as I kind of mentioned before, on enabling organizations to respond, recover, and reimagine the world of work. And obviously, as we all know, skills forms a core part of kind of enabling that, enabling leaders and organizations to reimagine the world of work. And I've got something in my notes here around how it's, it links back nicely our focus that we've had here with the FutureDotNow focus of driving employability, productivity, economic prosperity, and inclusion. So as we were kind of looking at kind of what our skills plan is in the UK, we wanted to understand better kind of how leaders can tackle the skills gap, which skills to focus on, which skills leaders should focus on, why skills investment is important to growth and recovery, and the practical steps on how to tackle the skills gap against the backdrop of COVID-19, which, as we're all familiar with, has shown the skills shortcomings into even sharper focus. So our study, which was launched on Monday as part of our Digital Skills Week, which is happening this week, has been conducted through summer and autumn of this year. So it's got some really interesting insights around kind of the impact of COVID, as was mentioned in the Lloyds and Be the Business report just then. And we also have some great case studies in there from Lloyds Banking Group, University of Lincoln, GSK, and more. So I wanted to just share a few of the interesting findings, and I have got a timer here, so I'll make sure that I don't go over. But if you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, please, Adam. I feel like I'm doing a briefing. Prime Minister briefing. One of the key parts was obviously, as we're all familiar, the leaders recognise the urgency of closing the skills gap. Okay, and some of the insights that we have here is that 69% of leaders are aware that they currently have a skills gap. 78% recognise that having a large pool of digital talent is essential to driving UK competitiveness, and will be important to our economic recovery over the next few months. And employees agree as well, saying that 59% told us that skills will be important to employability following COVID-19. But if we might go into the next slide, please, Adam. But this may all be quite familiar, but it's quite clear that urgency and that awareness now needs to be transformed into action. And we kind of identified in 2020 kind of where the key challenges lie. Understandably, cost is a factor. There's also a lack of direction amongst leaders in terms of strategy and direction. But it's not just internal obstacles as well, with many who we surveyed, around 2,000 leaders that we surveyed, expressing need for more support from education and government, with just 27% of UK leaders believing the education system offers adequate training for pupils right now. So next slide, please. Cheers. So we know the challenges, and we wanted to kind of understand how do we move forward. So we took JISC's key areas of digital skills, the types of digital skills, and we ranked them according to business impact, kind of with our academics survey, and data literacy came out on top, which we found was kind of really interesting, the type of skill that, then with the kind of data literacy, it can build into kind of more technical skills around cloud, AI, that kind of thing. But we wanted to go even further to split these skills into two different distinct categories. One of them being productive skills, which are kind of the technical skills which allow somebody to create digital tools and systems, and one of them being consumptive skills, which you can see on the right there, the skills that allow someone to use digital solutions that others have built. You might notice that the productive skills that you can see on the slide here are typically, I think, what many would consider the more intermediate to advanced skill areas, and the consumptive skills are things like the competent use of collaboration software, such as Microsoft Teams, Zoom, that kind of thing. So it's very much a distinction between create and use. And these are the two kind of skill areas that we defined. Now, why is that important? We found it was important because productive skills, the more technical, intermediate, advanced skills. From our survey, we found that they actually can deliver double the organization performance, the business performance of the consumptive skills, but they aren't being prioritized, with more leaders, quite understandably, I think, but more leaders thinking that agreeing that the consumptive skills are important, and fewer seeing these productive, these technical skills, AI, coding, computing, and getting creative with technology. Fewer leaders seeing that as important, and even fewer employees, around 17%, being able to deploy those productive skills. If you might go into the next slide, please. Cool. So so with that in mind, I mean, I'll share the link to the report afterwards. But what was interesting is, but perhaps not surprising, is that actually there's also a significant productive skills inequality and regions. So financial services and London show the greatest prevalence of these skills, but then there's also the retail sector and Wales, which report the lowest. But in every case, the number of people exhibiting the consumptive skill
So it looks like we might have lost Harry there, unfortunately. I wonder if I might, just thinking about the fact we've got about 10, 11 minutes left, maybe it's a good opportunity to start taking some of the questions and addressing some of those that are there in the chat. So if you don't mind, Harry, when he comes back, we can hopefully close off some of those questions. But otherwise, I'll just move over to the Q&A. So Tom, if you don't mind, I might just start with you. So as you know, you talked a bit about the National Skills Fund, which is really helpful context. I guess considering that we have a mix of digital skills providers, corporates, charities on the call, how can people get involved? What does that Skills Fund mean for some of the people on the call?
Hi, sorry, classic. Still on.
No, don't worry,
still on mute. Happens at least twice a day. Yeah, thanks for those questions in the chat. So yeah, I think there's a couple of things to sort of get across to people on the call, and also with sort of any of your contacts, whether that's within your organisation or if you're a sort of partner organisation that work with a number of try not to use the word organisation again, a number of other smaller companies or individuals. So as I set out before, sort of level 3 offer will be announced next week. So I think the key thing from our perspective on that will be engaging providers in local areas right across the country. So I'm not sure if that sort of fits in with necessarily kind of this audience, but wanted to give that a plug anyway, and sort of welcome any thoughts on that. But obviously we're working very closely with sort of local government and FE colleges and things like that, but welcome any kind of thoughts and a sort of email exchange on that. I think for this audience, the skills boot camps, which as I mentioned before, particularly focused on sort of digital at the moment, so Leeds, the Nottingham and Derbyshire boot camp. I think when that's announced next week, that information will be made public. So there'll be a sort of expression of interest page. So that will be the place to express an interest in that, whether you're a kind of organisation or individual. But I think from a kind of I can't go into too much detail about sort of the sort of how they will be set up and the sort of mechanism to that, but essentially there will be a sort of procurement type process. So there'll be sort of contact details available for those specific hubs around the country when that comes online over the next month or so. I mentioned the consultation as well. I know April feels a long way away, but not that I don't like Christmas, but it sort of couldn't come soon enough for me. Start of spring and all that. So yeah, in April we'll be running a consultation on the whole of the fund and the whole of the kind of sort of planned activity. So that's really the space where we would encourage everyone with an interest, with ideas in kind of not just digital, but obviously we're looking at digital here in terms of, you know, what should the fund, but like government more widely, be doing to support digital skills. So recognise a number of the comments were around, you know, well, what about kind of sort of entry level digital skills? Well, absolutely, and yes, obviously we, you know, I know it's a bit of a throwaway comment, but obviously government does want to support that. I guess just, yeah, the NSF is sort of focused on sort of level 3+, but, you know, a question or a sort of challenge for us will be, how do we make sure that there's a, you know, a sort of pipeline of people coming through for level 3, because actually that might be a big challenge. It's sort of all well and good sort of saying let's have lots of level 3, but what about actually if we need to, you know, invest more in sort of supporting people, you know, sort of up through basic skills level 2 into level 3. So yeah, be great to sort of hear more about that. I didn't put my contact details in the chat, but I will do after this as well if anyone does kind of want to drop me an email.
And just 2 quick questions, if I may. So I think you've talked about, you know, part of the level or I guess some of the criteria around the fund being level 3 and up. Are there any kind of focuses or priorities in terms of, I know there's a few people on the chat who are interested in the kind of age ranges or stages as well. So I think the question 1 would be, are there going to be any criteria or priority focuses in terms of people's demographics? And then I think the second one would also be, you know, I think a lot of us have seen across the last few months the challenges around devices, which you know, FutureDotNow has done a bit of work in previously, has handed on to the Reboot initiative. But you know, is the National Skills Fund connected into and interlocking in on some of those infrastructure and kind of device data poverty support type points as well?
Good question. Good or questions, I should say. Yeah. So in terms of the kind of target group, sort of NSF is, and this, sorry, my oversight early on, sort of rattling through the sort of pitch at the start, is very much about sort of ages 24+. So specifically, you know, kind of adults that are out of sort of formal education. So we know that is a group that just doesn't get, you know, the kind of support, funding, etc. sort of historically. So that has been the focus. This level 3 offer, the extension entitlement does actually sort of start from sort of an earlier age group, so it's kind of 19+, but it, you know, the program is very much focused on kind of adults that aren't covered across other sort of bits of funding. The digital poverty point, it's a really good question. I think, I mean, it's definitely something that we're looking at. So, I mean, a big focus by necessity rather than design, obviously, over the last year has been, you know, everyone's at home, not necessarily going into sort of FE colleges. What do we do about that? It wasn't kind of a core purpose of the NSF, but clearly across government, like, yeah, that's something that we're going to need to sort of continue to look at. I mean, I can't say there will be funding available from the NSF to support that, but I would imagine that would be, you know, if I was designing a program and looking at barriers to sort of boosting learner numbers for whether it's level 3 or other bits of the program that we end up focusing on, that's probably going to be you know, something that we would sort of need to support. And I know sort of DWP and other departments are looking at that as well. So yeah, we'll definitely need to look very closely at that.
And I guess theoretically, that's all the kinds of things that we can help feed in as part of the consultation and kind of share with you offline as well. So I'm sure there'll be a few people on the call today who'll be reaching out on those points. And now just very quickly, Harry, so I know that your connection ducked out at the end of the presentation there. We've only got a few minutes left, but I suppose, you know, very conscious that there, you know, you've looked quite in quite a lot of detail across a few different organisations to really understand some of those, what are the skills that are kind of related to productivity across a whole breadth of different kind of areas within the organisation. I guess, Harry, just thinking about the audience that's on the call today, I know you've shared your details, but are there any kind of key takeaways for the FutureDotNow audience?
And sorry about that. I didn't know if it was a timeout.
No, don't worry.
But I think it was a power cut in my flat. So there's a couple of key takeaways, I think. One of them is around kind of it's that I was trying to get on board, who have these kind of this mixture of these productive skills. They make up 73% of the workforce is what we identified, and actually the onus is on leaders to kind of where those next gen workers fit, but also it's about kind of I think there's a major piece in rethinking that leaders approach talent gaps, look outside traditional talent pools, and identify how to
Harry, you're breaking up a little bit, so apologies. I think it might be a bit of an ongoing Wi-Fi issue, but I think what Harry was covering off there is that I think the Microsoft work, as we understand it so far, is very much focused on how to support leaders with making decisions about the future of their the future of their talent, how they can reskill, retrain, and what are some of those considerations. So lots of synergies, I think, for FutureDotNow, and a great kind of build on top of that essential digital skills framework and work that we've kind of focused on. So some great collaboration opportunities there, I think. So I know we've only got a few kind of minutes left, and Nadia, I don't know whether there is anything that you wanted to kind of include as part of the wrap up or any next steps.
Yes, thanks, Gemma. So thanks so much for all of our speakers. That was a super insightful session. In the last few seconds we've got left, we just want to let you know that this is our last coalition call of the year, but we will be back in January, early 2021. As mentioned earlier, we will be using that session to share insights from our digital skills playbook. And we'll also be hearing from Skills Forward on an EDS assessment that they've put together and how that links in with the NCFE, an organisation that we've been linking in with, who are working on an EDS qualification. That should be a really insightful session. So please do sign up for that. You can sign up via the Eventbrite link, or you can also search FDN on Eventbrite and you'll be able to find it there. Secondly, if you do have anything you want to share with us, please do drop us an email at hello@future.now.uk and we'll be happy to speak with you on that. We've also got our newsletter coming up. So if you do want to sign up to that, please just drop an email to us and we'll be able to sign you up for that too. And we're also going to have a really interesting new feature in there. And if you have any stories on communication in particular, as one of the EDS points, we'll be looking at communication as part of that newsletter. So please do drop us a note on that too. And lastly for me, in the last few seconds that I have, if you haven't signed up to be a member yet, please do. What are you waiting for? Sign up. I'm sure you've really enjoyed today's session. Again, you can do so by checking out our website, and again, we'll put the link in for that. So if you haven't yet signed up, please do. We're looking forward to working with you in the future. So again, thanks for joining us. Happy holidays in advance, and we look forward to seeing you in January on our next call.
Thank you, Nadia, and thank you for joining.